Hey.
Hello.
How are you?
Great. Like Tony the Tiger.
No, Tony the Tiger's great. You have to emphasize it. You've seen the cereal box? That, by the way, is my favorite sweet cereal ever.
Is it really?
Frosted Flakes. Every time I visited my grandmother's house for New Year's Eve, she got me a box. I thought it was Christmas.
Yeah.
It's the best thing ever. All right, guess what today is?
Ask me anything.
Yes, you got it. Ask me anything. This is the podcast episode where we answer questions that people are putting inside of training camp.
Yeah.
And we are very attentive to people who have questions. We want people to understand things.
Yep.
So every month, here we go. Are you ready? It's clear that DSRP has faced a lot of criticism. I can tell from your social media that you respond to that criticism honestly and fairly. Can you talk about the top one or two criticisms DSRP gets and what your response is to those? And I should say this comes from our very good friend, Mark.
That's an interesting question because I think oftentimes, in systems thinking, because it's a scientific field, but also, a practice and applied field, a lot of the criticisms are coming from people that don't entirely understand it.
Yes.
If I'm being honest, there's not that many criticisms that I'm like, oh, geez, that's a real problem. It's usually because of a lack of understanding. Having said that, I have tons of criticisms of DSRP, probably more than anybody, and want to. I mean, all of our research agenda is based on all those criticisms and like where should we take it, in what directions, where do we need more empirical evidence to be able to, validate certain hypotheses and things like that. So, I mean, I don't know if I would call them criticisms per se. I would call them questions. There's so many hypotheses that we have that we want to learn more about. But in terms of the base DSRP, I think we've done enough empirical research to know like the most important hypotheses have been validated. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that answers the question, but he's looking for specific places. I think
from our history, I think the biggest criticism that comes over and over again is the idea of universality.
Yeah.
I think people have a hard time with that one.
Yeah, which is weird because, they don't, in a lot of disciplines, universality is kind of just like a given.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's not like physicists are sitting around going, let's find some rules that sometimes work, and like chemists aren't sitting around going, let's find things that are often the case, They're trying to find universality, right?
We can make funny cartoons.
For some reason, when you get to things that involve humans, humans don't want to believe that they're patterned beings, And I've even had psychologists, say, you can't have there's pattern to the way humans behave.
Yeah.
And if there isn't, then there is no field of psychology. Because if there's no pattern, there's nothing to study.
Right.
Right? If everything's just sort of random and different, then what are you going to study? There's no justification for a field.
Yeah, there's only instantiations then.
Yeah.
There's no connection between them.
Exactly. So, I mean, there are patterns, and there are patterns to the patterns. And eventually you get down to the base patterns.
Right.
The other thing that people confuse is that when you're a universalist, you're a reductionist, because they think that you're going down, right?
Right.
And they miss the idea that underlies complexity, which is that these simple rules actually drive emergence. So there's nothing reductionistic about emergent properties.
Okay, you're going to have to slow down now for the audience.
Yeah.
Because you're talking gobbledygook.
Okay.
So let's just explain what you mean there. To say that because of emergence, make the connection between, explain reductionist and emergence and then connection.
Okay, so if I said, for example, that a system, that this really cool holistic system that we're interested in is made up of these 5 parts, and then all I did was study the 5 parts.
Right.
And then I said, if I take what we learned from this part and this part and this part and this part, and I sum total them, then that explains the whole. People would call that reductionistic, and that is reductionistic. That's the definition of reductionistic, because you're reducing it to the parts.
Right.
But when you're studying simple rules, you're not. That's very different than being reductionistic. Those simple rules are universal across that emergent system, and those rules are accounting for the dynamics among the parts.
Because they're constantly interacting.
Because the parts are constantly interacting based on those rules. So people confuse that is a form of reductionism when it's literally the opposite of reductionism. It's reductionism holism. It's seeing the connection between the holistic emergent properties and the reductionistic rules, not the reductionistic structural parts,
right?
But the reductionistic rules that dynamically create a collective dynamic that lead to the emergent properties that we see that we call holism, right?
Right.
I think people just get confused by that because either they don't understand complexity and how it kind of works, or they don't understand reductionism. So again, like, is that a criticism? Yes. Is it one I take seriously? Not really, because it isn't. It's basically just based on being misinformed.
Right. And I think one of the things that was clear in the question is that when there's a criticism that comes from somebody who is informed and has an understand or is trying to understand what DSRP theory is, you take those very seriously, you test them, you interrogate the theory. You interrogate the theory more than anybody. You criticize it more than anybody, because that's what a scientist does, right? Is you're constantly checking.
Yeah, and the other thing is, I don't even put it in the language of criticism, to be honest. Like, I'm not like critical of my theory. I just am like, I've got tons of questions and I want to answer them, and it's like today, one of the things we're doing today is EEG studies. I want to know if trained people in DSRP have a particular difference in their brain pattern.
Right.
That's a question. That's not a criticism, but it's a super interesting question to me.
Yeah.
And I want to learn more about it.
Yeah.
Right. So to me, it's more like I've got pages and pages of questions. They're not necessarily criticisms, because criticism kind of like.
Yeah, maybe it's the word.
It tends to be more in like philosophical debate, and I'm not that interested in philosophical debate. Because it's just like whose opinion and who can politic better to make their argument. And it's kind of lawyeristic.
I think a better word would be challenge. Like to challenge, like you're I think from our research and watching us over the years, we're constantly pushing to see in different contexts and in different ways the veracity of the theory itself. Right, in existence, in application, and all of those things, in effect.
Yeah, I mean, it's a funny thing. In The Origin of Species, Darwin talks a lot about, he says on 12 different occasions in the whole book, he says statements that are essentially analogous to this. If you can go out in the world and find even a single example that is like this in the real world, and these are the words he uses, it would annihilate my theory.
Right.
And when I read that, I get chills, because I'm like, that dude was so ballsy. Like, he's coming up with one of the most amazing ideas that any human mind has ever seen in the universe, evolutionary theory. Mm-hmm. And as he's saying it, he's literally like throwing down the gauntlet. Like it's almost like I can like channel what it feels like to be in that scenario where you're like, just help me find a single example and I'll just give this up.
Right.
Like, find me a single example, because he's going through his brain and going, could this really be it? Like, is it really this simple?
Yeah.
And he knows that if there was one example, and biologists have been looking for those examples
For a long time.
For a long time, nobody's found one.
Right.
Right. So I mean, he knew what he was doing, and he also knew, and I think he knew that like there would be a certain weight lifted if somebody did call him up and be like, "Hey, I found an iguana that does exactly what you said couldn't happen," and he's like, "Great, I'm done. I'm going to go like get a job as a pharmacist or something."
That would be an interesting choice.
Or whatever. Like I'm gonna do something different.
I like the beach idea. Like
Exactly.
I think
I'm
he
just gonna
deserves
chill.
a rest.
Yeah.
Like he's done a lot. Let's take a break.
He spent a lot of time on beaches, so I don't know if he would have.
Maybe climbing a mountain.
Yeah, or something.
Or a snowy retreat. Who knows? All right. Well, I think Mark got more than he asked for that, so that was good. Do you know if ChatGPT is capable of doing DSRP, and have you been able to make a chat that does it?
That is an interesting question. So I think you can train chat to do what appears to be some DSRP. Yeah, but I don't think chat in and of itself does DSRP in completeness, right? It's making distinctions. It's doing some of it, but it's doing it like regular humans do it. It's not doing it like a trained person does it. So, for example, it's seeing the identity but not the other. It's seeing parts, but providing those parts in a particular framework, and it's not like mixing and matching those parts.
Well,
it's not always seeing the relationships between the parts. It's not zooming into relationships.
But you know why? Because it's trained on the body of human knowledge, which is
for sure
has inherent flaws. We have statistically isolated.
Yeah.
Like people tend to see identities, not others. People tend to not make the relationships.
So it's just repeating those same patterns.
Yeah.
I mean, people keep saying, the best way to see whether something's ChatGPT or not, or AI is it uses a lot of double dashes.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
And you're like, the reason it uses a lot of double dashes is because a lot of people out there are using double dashes. It's just mimicking.
It's a reflection of us.
It's a reflection of us.
Yes. Okay.
Right? It's not like chat's like, hey, I like double dashes. I'm going to start using them.
Yeah, and I think one other important point to George's question that we should highlight is chat or AI focuses on the I, the information.
It's entirely I.
It's all information.
Yeah.
So if you don't feed it information, it's inert. Like it needs information.
It has to be huge corpus training.
Yeah. It's very focused on the
large language models.
Yes.
I mean, that's why they call them LLMs, is they're large language models.
Okay.
O is not part of the algorithm.
No, not at all. But it is a human algorithm.
And a natural algorithm.
We can train it. All right, so our next question comes from Kevin. Hi, Kevin. Can complexity mean different things to different people depending on how much cognitive loading they can handle?
That's a complex question. So yes, I mean complexity can mean different things to different people. If you showed a